Hey everyone, this is Ilan from Egard, and I'm here with Cliff Williams, and just a really, really cool guy. And the way I met Cliff was through the brand, but your music, which is fantastic. He's a bassist for the group 7th Time Down. And if you haven't heard them, they have a very, very popular song called God is on the Move. It has like over 18 million views on YouTube alone. And I'm just so happy to have you here. Your music's really powerful. It's the right kind of message for today's world. And I think that's just really nice. So I'm happy you took the time to come on.
Oh, I'm grateful, man. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I followed you guys' brand for a while, and just to get to have this moment is pretty cool. Cause we make a video kind of, me and my buddy kind of goofy, like just to show support for a brand we like. And then next thing you know, I get to have a chat with you about some deeper, cooler stuff. So I like that.
Yeah, well, it just seems like your story is just super interesting. And again, I like to bring on people who promote positive messages of fatherhood and faith and all that stuff. And, we were just talking before this, and you said there was a song that you guys had that you really like called Questions. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So, man, and you never know how things are going to work. Like when you're trying to do singles and stuff like that, we call it throwing darts. And you know that when you're like making a new watch design or whatever, you don't know how it's going to take off, if people are going to really dig it or not. You cross your fingers, especially if it's one you like a lot. And this song, man, it came from a place where Mikey, our lead singer, dude, they had a miscarriage, and it hit him like a left hook, dude, because it was like, they got pregnant really fast. They were praying about it. Just early on in the pregnancy, he's getting a phone call from his wife saying like, something's terribly wrong. And he's sitting there like praying like, God, what are you doing? I don't understand. Like, I expect to have a kid. What is the deal? And they lost the baby. And that put him into a season of where he was like, he's like, to this day, I still don't know what God was thinking, like why that went the way it did. Unless it was just to give me that story to tell people that I still know he's good, and that we still believe in pushing forward and in faith and in truth. And about a year later, they got pregnant again, and they had Junie. And so in that season of life where he had all these questions, we also had friends of ours in bands and stuff who were like leaving the faith. And so when they sat down, got in the room, and they shared these stories of like, the reason this person was leaving the faith is because these big questions that they didn't even feel comfortable asking people about, or they felt as a believer, you're not supposed to have that kind of question. And like, it's all real taboo to even think these kind of thoughts. The song, really, the heart of it is just like, it's okay to not have all the answers. And, for us, it's God is not afraid of any question you have. That's like the heart of it. And so when the song came out, we felt it was like super special and meaningful for the moment. And, so we shot a video for it, and kind of guerrilla style, just because we believe in it. And so hopefully that turns people's attention to it, because it's none of it's fluff. It's all legit. It's all stuff we went through, questions we have and we ask ourselves. And that's just who we are. I mean, I'm too country and too in the South to be to put up any pretense, let's say.
Well, you know what? I got to be honest with you. I think one of the most important and powerful things people can do is exactly what you're doing, which is not to shy away from those questions, because it can only reaffirm your faith in the end. You know what I mean? Like the more you hesitate and the more you resist from actually putting yourself out there and saying, okay, this is on my mind, I need to address this. If you just keep that inside, that's going to keep growing and growing and growing. And it's not easy. I mean, I have a buddy who always told me, he's like, it should never be easy. You know what I mean? That's part of it. That's part of the journey. It should always be full of questions. And that's just the human condition. That's just how we're built.
Dude, I got on a personal note for me, I got a degenerated disc in my lower back that we were talking earlier. I've got a 7-year-old, I've got a 5-year-old, and an 18-month-old, all boys, all love to play in the backyard, all want to toss the football, all want to run mad dash down the road, all want to skateboard and all this stuff. And, I'm a believer. I love the Lord. I try to raise my kids to be right, to be honorable men, good people. And it's one of my questions I have is like, why, if I go in the backyard and run with my kids at 37. Why, if I go run with my kids in the backyard for 30 minutes, am I going to be like sore and stiff and unable to move for the next 2 days? You know what I mean? Like, it's a question I still have. And I know it came from years of loading music gear and being in a band and doing the stuff that I felt like I was doing the right thing, you know, like for the faith. It's a question that I don't have the answer for, but I still know that, you know, my faith is real and God's good. And that I look at the blessings I have and I'm like, I mean, the fact that I got a problem as a human, you know, that I don't have an answer for, it doesn't change who God is when I look around what I see about, you know, the blessings I have and what I'm responsible for. That's the big thing.
Can I tell you what my view on that is? So like, okay, so 5 years ago, I remember I went to a doctor because I lost feeling in my leg. And I was getting weird fevers at the time and some other stuff going on. And they checked for reflexes in my leg and they said, oh, you got no reflexes. We got to send you in for an MRI. I get a call the next day, 7 a.m. in the morning. I was sleeping. I wake up to this voice message at 8 a.m. saying, we found what looks like a tumor in your spine. We need you to come right back in. It explains why your leg's not moving right. It explains the fevers. It explains all the stuff going on with you. And I'm like, a tumor in my spine. So I Google right away and it says you got 10 months to live. Most likely that's, you know, it's spread to your spine or it's primary.
Google tells you the worst every time.
Well, the doctors were not too happy either. I mean, they were worried.
Man.
And so they told me, they're like, look, if it's a tumor, it's a problem. And so my expectations were that my life is over. And then I got diagnosed shortly after that. They did more testing. They found out I have an autoimmune disease. It's attacking my spine. And they said there's a 5% chance if we don't do this crazy operation, you're going to be walking in 3 months. I didn't do the operation. And actually, that was the darkest period of my life. And before that, I didn't really have much faith. I've kind of been in and out of it my whole life. You know what I mean? Like I've just always struggled with it. Same way as you. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why does life have to be hard? Why do kids get sick? And it was like in the darkest places that I actually found the greatest connection to something bigger than myself and to take the pressure off myself. And the weird thing that I noticed is that part of the human journey, part of why we're here, is to experience the widest spectrum of emotions. And part of that and experiences. And part of that is suffering. We do. Yeah. Part of the human condition is to suffer. It's also to love. It's also to feel joy, but you need that huge spectrum to appreciate everything on this end of it. And I think that's why we do go through these things. You know, and so you imagine everything in life was just given to you and it was perfect and it was easy.
If everything was good, nothing would be good. I actually, it's funny because I actually was in sort of a, you know how you get in those heated YouTube / Facebook, whatever, message wars back and forth. And I always, if I ever do that, if I ever comment, I try to keep it like real. Hey, no judgment. This is coming out of a place of love, but this is how I feel about it. And I was on this, an atheist page that I follow a lot because I like to see what the other side of every picture, what their viewpoint is and this stuff. And honestly, there's smart people on all sides of the spectrum, like obviously, you know. And one of the things I told him is that, like, that big question, if there's a loving God, why would they let bad things happen to good people? And I was like, well, if you don't have the antithesis of something, it loses its specialness. I was like, if you don't experience bad, if you don't experience pain, you don't know what joy is. And there's nothing significant about having joy. And so I affirm that, man, like that makes, like I said, when I think about that, the problems like in my spine or whatever, and like the situation you went through, I can look and it makes me appreciate all the good even more. You know, I can say, well, dang, I've got 3 of the healthiest, coolest kids in the world that, knowing how dumb I am at times, they have like 100% chance of being way cooler than me, like all 3 of them right now, you know? So it's like that. I mean, that's a huge blessing, you know, and
it is.
I may not appreciate that as much if everything was just easy peasy all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe the times I do get to go out in the yard and play with them wouldn't mean as much for me if it was normal and easy all the time. It comes at a cost. I know that the next day I'm going to have to wear my back brace and kind of like take it easy, you know, but that cost makes it more precious to me, you know, and maybe that's the whole reason, or maybe the reason is just to have that story to tell somebody.
Yeah, to help, and it can help other people. And you never know the impact of your story on people behind closed doors. You know what I mean? And like, even now we're hearing about the loss of a miscarriage, right? We're hearing about the loss of a child, and that's like the most devastating thing in the world. But how many other people are going through something similar? How many other people can hear that story, can hear the song, and can grow from it? So there is always some kind of beauty hidden in the worst tragedies. And I think that sometimes one of the biggest gifts, and this might offend a lot of people, I think sometimes one of the biggest gifts we're given in life is adversity.
Mm-hmm.
There is no greatness without it. I don't know anyone who is great who hasn't recovered from adversity to reach their greatness.
Dude, my friend Joel, that you hear me talk about, some of the guy that have done our videos and stuff with, he came to God through being suicidal. And I'm sure we talked about it so much, he wouldn't mind me sharing a little bit of his story. He was active in church, hardcore. Like, he was a worship leader. He was in a fairly locally successful band, had all the parts in the right places. But he was getting all of his identity through his relationship with this one girl. And when that went south, he just lost it. He got into a bad place. Like he told me, he's like, he owns a gun now because of that time period in his life. You know what I'm saying? Where he was thinking about taking his life. And through getting into the, like sort of you said, the darkest time in his life, that's where he really found God and faith. He said faith pulled him out of that. And so he spent 4 years, when it was all said and done, he spent 4 years making a movie about it. So his movie he has called Rock for Jesus is basically that story of him being a worship leader, about to take his life. And so, but same thing, like his whole band now that he had called One Life was all about how precious life is. And it was about suicide prevention and all that. And so he had an opportunity to sort of get a ministry, but I guarantee if you asked him on the front end, like, hey man, do you think you'd like to be suicidal for a while in your life? Like, he probably would have been, heck no, like, no way, of course not, but from that, like you said, came something pretty beautiful.
Yeah. No one would ask for the struggles, but when you beat the struggle, that's kind of why we question it. I guess that's what it's all about, right? If we didn't, we don't want it, but it's actually sometimes the most important thing for us, for our journey. I'd love to hear your story, kind of how you got into music and
Sure.
just your whole experience around that. And also, your story of faith and God and
yeah, well, music. So we had talked about it before. My dad's been a minister for 63 years. My mom was from Kentucky. We were originally in Florida, Central Florida, Webster. It's basically a hole in the wall. I call it the Kentucky of Florida. There's really nothing there but a farmer's market. And so we lived there, and then we would visit my mom's family in Kentucky. One year coming home, we're driving this Mark III van with that, like, had the bench in the back that laid down to a full bed. And so all the kids were laid out on that thing while they're up there driving. And all of a sudden, Mom says, she tells the story the same all the time. Dad just starts crying, and she looks at him. She's like, what? And he's like, I got a burden for Kentucky. He's like, I feel like I need God. I need to move up here and start a church. And that was the last thing you'd have expected, because we had pretty good thing going. We had a nice piece of property in Florida. Dad had a good job. My mom had gotten really high up in the sheriff's department. It was like, they're going to retire early, all these wonderful things. And he's like, no, we got to uproot. And it was just crazy, like that he would think that. But it happened, and he started the church up here. And we were a traveling band. Like, we were a family band. Like, me and my brother, he'd be 6 and I'd be 3. And we're like up there just yelling and pretending like it's singing while my uncle plays bass and my dad plays guitar. And we'd all play the hymns, like the old school, like 70, 80-year-old songs now. And he would preach. And so from that, I went into high school, met Mikey. Our band, the story's we're kind of a unicorn, because we're all dudes who grew up together and are 17 years later now, still a band, and still.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And we didn't realize how bizarre that story was until we started getting around other bands, and they're like, so do you travel with your band? What do you guys do? Do you guys like share rooms, hotels? What do you do? And we're like, yeah, of course. And they're like, what? And we're like, well, we're all buds. Like, we've been together this long. I guess maybe like U2 and those kind of bands had stayed together the whole time, but
yeah,
anymore, it seems like members just kind of
come and
fall
go,
in
or
and
they're
out.
just orchestrated. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah.
pulled and they audition people, but it's very rare you have childhood friends who you grow up with who become.
Yeah. So for us, we were playing youth camps. And we're from a small town. So fortunately, it was like either get into music, get heavy into sports, or to be honest, get into meth and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm grateful and blessed, that it went the way that it did, that we kind of got into music. Our lead singer, he shares a story a lot from stage. Mikey, we were in chorus together, and he got asked to leave choir by the teachers. He's like, I just don't know that choirs is your thing. And I went on to do Mikey shares it. He's like, choir boy over here went on to do all state choir 3 years in a row and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, but now I get paid to sound like this guy, it's just, so it's just funny. We grew up together. We played sports together. Right about the time that we decided that we were okay with being weekend warriors, that we were okay with just getting regular 9 to 5s and just maybe being a band in a church or something. Cause we'd been doing it on our own for a while, making calls, 100 calls a day, man. And like emails on all these weird church websites where you could have this church email list and just contact people and see if they'd have your band. Years of doing that, we finally were like, we're okay with just being a weekend warrior band. We'll get jobs and be all right. And we're still going to do it because we love it and we love the ministry. Right about that time was when we wrote Just Say Jesus. And that's kind of when the floodgates opened up, and that song, I guess it stayed on the chart. Somebody said like 52 weeks or something like that, which just, it blew. I mean, like I said, it blew us away because we weren't expecting that. We were ready to just be youth pastor, weekend warrior type dudes. And shortly after that, we wrote God Is on the Move, and felt like that was just kind of God dropping something in your lap. It was, people really responded well to it. And the stories that we heard from Just Say Jesus and God Is on the Move, people that like, this song got me through a difficult space. One gal, she'd been through a 10-month battle. I remember this, man, I could see her face right now. She was after a show come up. She'd been on a 10-month battle with cancer. She was with her whole family. And she even said, she goes, it's very likely that I won't be alive for Christmas this year, but we wanted to come to your show. It was like around November or something. She said, but me and my family, my daughters, we wanted to come to your show and let you know that your song's helping me get through all my treatments and everything. And that stuff, I mean, not all the stories are like the beautiful, like exactly how you want it to go. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm looking and her daughters are kind of crying around her, knowing that this is a goodbye kind of thing. But to feel that you can be a part of somebody's story in these big moments, and even in what I consider sort of an insignificant way, like, hey, she's listening to my song, like that.
That's not insignificant. Don't say it's insignificant. That's very powerful for a lot of people. I can really help people through the darkest of times, music.
I'm grateful. I was grateful to be part of it. Like it's hard for me to remember that story, being honest with you, because that's one that's stuck with me a long time. And, but it's one that hit me at a pretty important place, because we were making decisions about whether or not we were going to do a lot of shows every year. Or we were going to scale it back because we all had kids. We made mistakes, man. My first year of my first son's life, we did 183 shows. I was on the road 9 months out of that year. I watched him walk the first time on video. Like it sucked. Like it just sucked. And so we made some changes, but those stories helped us get through the more, because you wonder, like, why am I sacrificing my family on the altar of my ministry? You know what I'm saying? Am I doing that? And those stories really helped kind of let God give us clarity and balance when we needed it, and saying, hey, you're doing the right thing. Maybe you need to make some adjustments, but you're still doing the right thing,
Mm-hmm. Well, that actually raises an interesting kind of situation where what is the right thing, to spend more time with your family or to go out and help people? Because I read even on the comments section on you. I was just curious. I started going on, like, I like comment sections, and the amount of people who were like, this song is helping me through this right now. I'm in a dark place. This song is helping me through this. Well, that's just on one song. 18 million people just on YouTube. Maybe 100 million people heard the song. Who knows how many people heard the song? You know what I mean? And so how many of those people were positively impacted? So, I mean, I think one of the greatest obligations in life that we have is to, and I think, God gives us, let's say, a skill set. God gives us a certain talent. We have an obligation to live to the fullest extent of that ability because we were given it for a reason. And so
Yeah.
you guys are really going out there. And I mean that. Like I read the comment sections, you're telling me this story, but I'm sure there are millions. We're talking about millions of people who you positively impacted.
Ton.
So I think that's incredibly beautiful and incredibly powerful. So, don't second guess it.
Well, we one of the things we talk about is I say that altar. I I I say we say this. We say that God's given us two ministries. When we got married, our wife became a ministry. I read in it's a Francis Chan book called Me and You Forever. It said that my job as a husband is prepare her every day for the day she sees Jesus for the first time. Like that was a gut check for me because I was like, man, I barely scrape by on that. I barely get there. And but when I got married, that was a ministry God gave me. It's like He entrusted me with this woman who agreed to spend the rest of her life with me. And then we added kids in the mix, and it's like God's entrusted me again. I got to be a steward over these little lives, and we call it the great balancing act, man, where it's like you've got the ministry of your family, the ministry out making disciples, and you won't sacrifice one on the altar of the other. You just don't. You got to find that line and walk it. But the ministry that abroad is what has given us so many wonderful opportunities. Going to the Philippines. We've been to the Philippines now twice with this really big church out there. They have tremendous hearts. They're right in the heart of Manila. And every day they feed 1,500 hungry kids a hot meal every single day. And that's not like once a month. It's just an ongoing, and some of the like worst conditions. And every time we've been there twice now. And every time we ask, like, please, can we go out to the two, they call one of the places they call Aroma, and the other place they call Happy Land, which it's, dude, I've never experienced poverty like that until you've seen, it's just like kids walking around in just the worst conditions, and going in there and getting to feed those kids a hot meal, tell them God loves them, and see the joy on their faces, the ones that are actually in the program and the ones that the church is getting to work with, see the difference in the kids. That stuff, man, I would have never had those opportunities had a song like God is on the Move or Just Say Jesus, if God hadn't allowed those things to happen. And you're right. There's a responsibility, whatever talent that God's given you, whatever it is, you have a responsibility to nurture that talent and to grow it and to use it. The Bible has a phrase called everything you do to the glory of the Lord. I think that's just everything you do it with excellence. Do it with excellence and do it with purpose. So that way it's meaningful, that there's something different about Egard watches, maybe if people don't know what that something different is, it's there. And then there's something different about Seventh Time Down, and me and Joel, whatever, if we make a movie, short thing, whatever we do, there's something different about it, I think. And that's something, if people begin to dive into it, is God, is this desire to do something as if the hardest critic in the universe was critiquing it. You know what I mean? If the hardest critic, and I think that's just a call to excellence.
I think that's a really nice way to look at it. I mean, I did an interview with a really nice couple, and they always said, like, if you do every act, like, how do you live in the truest sense to kind of make God happy or to, your full potential. And they always said, just act out of love. If you're doing everything out of love, then you're really kind of acting in God's in the way God wanted you to act. So I kind of see it in the same way as what you just said. If you do everything with excellence, with love, with purpose, and from a good place, people will see something is different. People will see that there is something special there. I like to believe that.
Dude, I believe that too. I believe people are smarter than you give them credit for. Like they know authentic when they see it, when they experience it. Like I pray at night with my kids. It's like, when people walk into my home, let them feel something different, and let me know that difference is your love. Like, I'll know that difference is your love, but just let them know when they come in. I don't care what they call it. If they call it, man, there's a good vibe in here, or there's a sweet spirit, whatever they call it, I don't care, because I'll know that they're experiencing, like, everything I do it with love, do it with sincerity. do it as if everything was on the line, as if God was watching there. Like, are you gonna do me justice with this or what? You know?
Yeah. Excellent. I want to talk to you about one of the main things we talk about on this podcast typically is about masculinity and fatherhood.
Yeah.
And you said 3 boys.
Yeah. And they're all 3 completely different. Like, it's the weirdest thing, man. Like, the kids there's so much of them that is already programmed right out the box. Like, I'm just going to flat out say it. Like, my job is not to screw it up. That's it.
So in what way are they all different?
So in our prayers, Liam, my oldest, he's like an empath. So he's the one coming up to me, Dad, are you okay? Are you having an okay day? Like, he can tell when I'm stressed. He can tell when things affect him more difficult, like harder. I can't be as sarcastic with him as I can with my 5-year-old Griffin. Griffin is just a cut up, 100% cut up, super creative. He's the one that is humming a song or singing a song, but he does like I do, and he'll make up random words for it. And sometimes we don't say that, but it's like he just makes up random words, and that's him. His personality is thicker skinned. Like, you can goof off with him a little bit more without having to say, I'm just kidding, bud. You know what I'm saying? Liam, if I joke with him like that, I'm joking. I'm just kidding, bud. Like, Liam is sort of like my emotional center, dude. Like, he's really, really emotionally mature. Like, he's with it. He can read the room really, really well. Griffin is just my 5-year-old. He's so whimsical, so like a comedian. He just wants to. It reminds me of when I was little, and like I just would do anything for a laugh. Like, I just wanted people to laugh and smile and have a good time. That's how he is. And then Judah, he's the most stubborn of all 3 of my kids. The dude's 18 months old. I'm not going to say what I had to do to get him to eat food. Like, people would think I'm a bad dad. I had to like take some measures to get him to eat, because the kid, he's like, refuse. To get him to walk, it's like we had to hold him every day by his hands. He's like, I refuse. Nope, I'd rather sit and crawl. Like, he's been the most difficult with transitions, but he's the biggest character at that age too. Like, he just is so expressive, like his facial expressions, the whole deal. And he's the most stubborn, and everybody that knows us is like, you have the most chill baby in the planet, because he's the most stubborn, but he's just along for the ride, go with the flow. Like, my other kids would get upset like way quicker, and it just blows me away, because we've tried to raise them all the same, like with the same principles, and like, no, this is what it means to, they see me interact with their mom, and I'm like, you want to get me angry, you be mad at you be bad to your mom, because that's how you're supposed to treat a woman with respect, because they're special. And I know that makes me, what do they call it? Benevolent sexist or whatever. I just don't care. Like, I feel like women are special and they need to be treated that way. And, like, it's just how I was raised.
Man, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in society today with like the idea of gender roles, and like men shouldn't be men and women shouldn't be women. I like being a protector. And I'm not saying every man has to be a protector. I'm not saying, you know what I mean? But I know what I am built for. I know how I was made. And like, I like fixing things. I like being a protector. I've always been, I've been training fighting my whole life. And I like firearms, and, that offends people. And I like freedom of speech, and and vice versa. I appreciate all the qualities that are feminine in my partner, and like, she's incredibly powerful in her own way, and she's incredibly strong-willed. It's not like I see women as weak, but I do see them as fundamentally different, and we have different roles, and that offends a lot of people nowadays. And I'm like, you know what though, in every society where you start getting rid of these things,
it is not progressive, it's regressive, in my opinion, to try and blur the lines between masculine and feminine, because it's not good, and one's good and the other's bad. Like that, it's not that either. They're both unique and special and designed for each other. You know what I'm saying? To complement each other. My wife's she went to school for 9 years. She's a pharmacist. She if I'm being blatantly honest, she probably may not need me a lot of the times. Like sometimes I'm a burden because my schedule is crazy. I'm on the road, then I'm home, and she's got to adjust to when I come home and try and make the schedule work again. And she's so independent, like you said, and so strong. And being honest, like I feel the way you do. Like I like to be a protector. I try to raise my kids that way. Like, hey, be a protector, not just a woman, but somebody who needs need. You know, if you see a need, if you saw somebody getting bullied, I'd rather my kids be the one breaking up the fight and and I hate to say this, but correcting or punishing the bully, you know what I'm saying, and letting them know that there's consequences for treating people bad, than the one who's bullying somebody else or the one being bullied.
I'm going to tell you a story. When I was young, I was in the car with my dad, and I saw some teenagers who were about my age bullying and pushing down like a 10-year-old kid. I jumped out of the moving car, my dad's car. I jumped. I didn't even think. I ran and I tackled and like I stopped. My dad was like, "What is wrong with you? You need to calm down." He's like, "You really have a strong need to like stop things when you see them." I've always just been that way my whole life, and I think some people are just designed that way, and it doesn't mean that I look down on people who aren't or anything like that. But if I have a family, I want to raise my boys to be that way. I like it. And I think the world needs that. It needs people who are willing to step up and kind of take action and do the
man or women.
It's not a gender specific thing. And there's, like I said, there's incredibly powerful women, but again, there's a physiological difference between the average male and the average female. Again, that's taboo to say today, but I say it. I mean, it's just, at what point are we become so censored in everything?
I flat out say it. You look no further than the physiological differences in male and female. They're obvious. The biological markers are relevant, and they're there for purpose, for a reason, you know. And I'm not trying to disqualify anybody who feels a certain way. You know, I know there's all this stuff about genders and all this kind of stuff. If you're in your own skin uncomfortable, you know what I'm saying? Like you're uncomfortable in your own skin. What you got to do to feel better. You figure that out. Like you figure that out and do what you need to and get the support group to figure that out. But you're not going to make me say that makes male and female the same. I'm like, no, they're very different. They're necessary, man. It's absolutely necessary for there to be leaders and men, leaders and women. It's absolutely necessary to have those differences, in my opinion, because if you don't, it's like we were saying earlier, if you don't have those differences, there's nothing special about it. In my opinion, what's special about being a woman. If I can wake up tomorrow, again, this is going to offend people, and I'm sorry. What's special about being a woman if I can wake up tomorrow and be like, I think I'm a woman?
Oh, no, I will say the biggest detractor of feminism, of the movement itself, the worst thing that could happen to the movement is that gender no longer exists. How can you have any of these movements if gender fundamentally is a social construct? If women can be men and men can be women, and both can be neither, and both can be both, and both can be like these new things like fae and se and all these, so if you could be anything in the world, then being a woman doesn't actually mean anything anymore. So your whole movement doesn't. And I think there are a lot of women who are bothered by it when there's we're getting so off topic, but I don't mind. But there's a story that really bothered me that I read, which kind of really, because people always say, well, it doesn't affect you, so why do you care? It doesn't affect you, so why do you care? That's what I keep hearing. It's not your problem. And I actually, look, if I meet someone who identifies as anything, I'm going to treat them with respect. I'm not going to look down on them. I'm not judging them. Yeah. And honestly, like if it makes you feel better in your life, I support it. But where I have a problem is when it becomes an actual policy thing for society. Yes. So in the UK, there was a male rapist who had raped women and was going to jail for raping women, said he identifies as a female. And you can go on Snopes, which is not a right-leaning, far-right conspiracy or trans, they're very much fine with that side of the equation. They have no problem with it. They are saying the story is entirely true. It is an entirely true story. There's lawsuits. Identified as a female, went to a female prison, and sexually assaulted 24 more women in the female prison before being taken out. And you're going to tell me that doesn't, sure, it doesn't affect me directly, but it affects society. It affects women who are now victims of sexual assault. So no, I don't stand by and just say this is okay. We can't just get rid of these things.
It would only not affect you if you're someone who advocates for deliberate ignorance. Like if I'm just going to walk around deliberately blind and ignorant to like crummy stuff that happens, like awful things. Like I just want to, then it doesn't affect me. I'm not that kind of person. Like I've never been that kind of person, and I don't want, I'm not going to have 3 kids that aren't conscientious. I'm not going to have 3 kids that are like, I tell them a story like that and they're like, well, it doesn't bother me. So let's go play outside. No, I'm going to have them sit down and be like, what do you think about that? What do you think should happen here? You know what I mean? What's justice? Like that's on the banner on my phone. It says, I was praying one day and I was, a friend of mine's going through an entire church split.
Well, we froze up there. Do you want?
I got you.
Okay. You're back now. You were talking, take it back 30 seconds. If you want to start at the beginning of the story.
Okay. All right.
Sorry about that.
All right. So basically I had a friend who was going through a big church split. Mm-hmm. And his band the music direction was going a different direction and the church was going a different direction. And he's like, it's the first time in my life where I'm super confused. I don't know what to do. It's not comfortable at all. And I prayed with him and I got home and started praying for him. And it kind of hit me. And I was like, from the barn he was born in to the cross he died on, I was like, there wasn't much comfortable about Jesus's life for me. And I was like, so never again will I choose comfort and safety over truth and justice, period. And I'm going to teach my kids that. It's like I wrote it on a note, put it as a banner on my phone. So when I look at my phone, I see that never again choose comfort and safety over truth and justice. And that's a mantra for me right now. It's like, if I'm in the uncomfortable, or if I'm going to never avoid the situation, never avoid the conversation with my kids because it's uncomfortable. It's like I'm causing a problem later, like pursue truth and justice. And when it comes to genders and these kind of things, you're going to see more and more of that stuff where you realize that it's regressive to say that men and women are exactly the same thing. And then you have a great injustice that happens, like you talked in the UK, where 24 more women were assaulted by this man / identifies as a woman.
It's shocking. The responses I get when I bring it up to people who try to defend it is very weird, because they know they can't defend it. And they'll say, well, it's just one case. And I'm like, well, no, you're saying that there is no difference. So it's not just one case. For you, it should be every case. It should be. And so Biden actually, I believe, did a proposal saying like, oh, we're going to let people go to the prisons that they identify as. And they had something like 682. He just proposed it. They had 682 requests from prisoners that day when he proposed it. Guess how many of them were women asking to go to a male prison, and how many were men asking to go to a female prison?
Gosh, I hope you tell me what you're about to tell me, because I've had
100% was male prisoners who said they're female trying to go to a female prison.
I've had this. I've said the same thing to my friend the other day. I said, I guarantee you, there are more, the people transitioning. It's dramatic, like astronomically much more higher percentage that male transitioning to female. Like I guarantee you it is.
Well, we're also not seeing female to male people, like people who transition from female to male. We're not seeing them advocate to go compete in male leagues. Like if you look at the Olympics, it's the opposite. It's all the male to female people who are competing because they have a physiological advantage.
Yeah.
Women don't want to, a biological female who is smaller and, doesn't have the same kind of tendon strength, the same kind of, no matter what. I mean, you look at the Olympic world records. I did a study on this. I was just curious. On average, it's anywhere from 30 to 80% the world records for men versus women in anything to do with strength, speed, all those things. Up to an 80% advantage from the world records of men to women. That's almost twice the most elite.
And
almost twice.
People say you sound awful for saying these kind of things, but I can admit this openly. Dude, I'm a fan of billiards. Some of the best pool players are women, period. End of story. They crush it. Like they pull off tricks, shots you've never seen. I'm not sitting there saying that freaking every sport and every activity that requires some kind of physical, like trainable skill that men are just dominating with. You're not saying that. It's just, in reality, there are certain aspects of the female physique and the male physique that benefit and lend towards certain activities. It's been that way for since the dawn of human history. I mean, and just try and blur those lines now are creating problems that you don't even have to have in your society. You
Yeah,
shouldn't have.
look, I and like I said, I admire both. Like this Simone Biles, all that controversy aside, actually, I'm a huge fan of Simone Biles. I
Yeah.
think she is a powerhouse athlete. She does things that no one else can do, man or woman. I mean, she's a really exceptional.
Yeah.
So it's like I can appreciate a wonderful athlete, regardless of male or female, but I don't. And it's so weird to me that these are it's controversial today to say that you don't believe a male rapist should go to a female prison, I guess. That's how
Man,
far down.
what dude, was it Joe Rogan who said, I'm gonna get flack for this? But he talked about, he said, like, the MMA fighter that was transitioned over and
Fallon
put that girl
Fox.
in the hospital.
She broke she broke a woman's skull by punching her in the head because
And
she has
then
just such a physiological advantage.
the woman that beat that fighter, her
Yeah.
response was, even though I beat her, this individual, the person, even though I beat them, they still should be in their own league because
She said, I still never felt strength like that when she beat her.
yeah,
She was like,
yeah.
she just technically much. So Fallon Fox, as a man, would not be a pro fighter. Fallon Fox, as a man, would not be in the, first 500 ranked fighters, would be a failure as a fighter. Fallon Fox could not make it as a fighter, as a man. Fallon Fox, when transitioned, started breaking elite women fighters' skulls.
Dude.
I mean, I've been in fighting my whole life. I can tell you firsthand, I spar different. There are some women I spar with that I'm nervous. I'm like, these are elite.
I was just fixing to say, you're not saying that every dude's.
No, there are some women who
crush a girl. Dude,
no.
I'll get my butt kicked by lots of girls because
yes,
I'm not training.
Amanda Nunes would beat me up. Like she would, the Valentina Shevchenko. There's women who would destroy me in a fight, and I'm a good fighter. But you take someone at my level who is a woman. I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I'm not elite. I'm not a world champion. You take the average black belt female and the average black belt male, and I spar with both all the time. There is such a difference. I cannot explain it in just grip strength and the pull, the ability to be, and
even
and
just body mass, like the angles at which you take somebody down, like there's pressure and gravity and different pulls in different ways because the bodies are built different. That's just the way it is.
So, I mean, bring it back to being a father. It's just interesting. We're in this space now. Are you worried about your kids in the future and like what we're allowed to say, what we're not allowed to say, and how do you navigate around that and teach them like, hey, this is what I believe, but when you're in school or whatever it may be.
So I always have these like, I preface everything like, because your kids ask you about everything they hear, everything they see, they ask you about it. And so it'll be like, why is the sky blue, daddy? Or why is the moon out during the day or whatever like that? Why is the moon different shapes? And I always preface those things. Well, science tells us blah, 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 blah. I said, but I don't know this or this for sure because I haven't experienced it yet. And so for being a dad, that translates to everything you see, transgender, all this stuff. I'd say, well, some people think and believe that blah, 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 blah. And then they'll ask me, what do you believe? Because I've gained some respect from them because they know me to be a trustworthy person. They know that I value things like honor and truth and justice. I treat them fairly. And so because of that, other than the fact that I'm their dad, I had a heart with them the other day. I was just like, my 5-year-old was not he's not having it, man. Every time I try to play with him, he was just making me feel like scum. He's like, no, just complain nonstop. And everything I did was wrong. And finally I looked at him and was like, I call it a come to Jesus moment. I said, I have to be your dad, but I don't have to be your friend, but I want to be both. I said, so how can we be both? And it was like this, light bulb in his head. I was like, oh, okay. And so in pursuing being both a father and a dad or and a friend to my kids, there are all those conversations where you have to have some as a friend, as a bro, and then some as a dad. Mm-hmm. And for me, every single one of those conversations, first off, I say a little prayer when I begin into one of those conversations, like, Lord, don't let me screw this up. And I apologize a lot, man. I find myself going back to my kids and saying, hey, I'm sorry I overreacted on that. I didn't do the right thing there. It's daddy's first go around at trying to be a dad, so give me a little grace. and they respond to all that. So when they see all those things that kind of in their heads, let them realize, oh, daddy's trying, and I respect what he does. And when I earn a spot of respect in their minds, you know, from the decisions that I make on the daily and the observations that they make of me, it helps them when I start saying, hey, no, that's not how we treat people. Hey, no, that's not how, you know, we live in an area that's predominantly, for instance, like there's not a whole lot of, there's not like a variety of cultures and backgrounds and races. We're pretty homogeneous, like mostly white people here in the middle of Podunk, Kentucky. And so if we see someone who's Latino or African-American, whatever, and I let them come to me and they say, you know, the kid who's, well, they're darker than me. I don't know. I was like, does that matter to you? They're like, no. I'm like, shouldn't. You know what I'm saying? Like
Good,
that
yeah.
gives me an opportunity to, I'm in charge of that, teaching them to treat people a certain way. They like it. You know what I'm saying? Like it makes sense to them in their heads. And so it's a daily thing where I have to navigate those issues one bite at a time. And it's often, man, in complete and utter contradiction to everything that's out there telling them to be a certain way. It's frustrating. It is scary a little bit because, like you said, I do worry about the world I'm bringing my kids into, but it just makes me all the more conscientious of what I'm saying to them on the daily, and not only what I'm saying, how I'm living in front of them on the daily, because it doesn't matter what I tell them. If they see me treat somebody different or treat somebody bad or weird for whatever reason, that's what they're going to know. And that's what they're going to do.
Yeah. Big time. It's your actions that speak louder than words, obviously. I mean, so that is lead by example is the most powerful thing, I think, for kids. I'm going to ask you one last question and then I'll let you go because I took up a lot of your time. But
it's okay.
So rites of passage is a big thing I like to talk to people about because we don't have that in society anymore. You're raising 3 boys. Do you have anything planned for when they get to a certain age to be like, okay, this is the transition of you being a boy to a man? We're going on a camping trip and you're going to fend for yourself for a week, whatever that thing is. Have you thought about that? Is that something important to you? And did you go through something like that growing up?
If I'm being honest, like I hadn't thought about planning it so much, but now that you say that, like it makes me want to. It's going to make me want to, like, okay, we're going to do this and this and this right here. So, because in my head, I've already done some things. Like I'm a gun enthusiast. I'm a wildlife enthusiast. You know, we own a stick of land on the other side of town that earlier today, we were actually out there bush hogging and like moving logs and stuff. And I was like telling my father-in-law, I got to quit at like 12:30 because I got to wash up and not look like I came fresh out of the field, you know? But so a few of the things we've already done, but I never really made a big deal out of them. Now I'm like, I probably need to make a deal out of them because that would, to me, would be cooler. As a kid, that'd be cooler to me. Was shooting. Like my 7-year-old dude, he's a crack shot, man. We got a little 22 rifle that I'll set on a little shooting stick, and he takes his time and shooting a rifle for the first time.
That's a big one. That's a lot of responsibility, and it teaches kids to be disciplined. I think it's so important.
Well, and the truth be told, I'll tell you right now, other than my 18-month-old, I have a gun on my nightstand, you know what I'm saying? Like in case, you know, if there's an intruder or whatever, I've never had to worry about my kids playing with guns. They know they're there. They know they're in the house. I never had played with them when I was growing up, and they were everywhere. My dad was a gun enthusiast, hunting every single year over every nightstand. I knew where they were. I never played with them, my friends, because my dad took the time. This is gun safety. My kids have been in the dining room when I'm cleaning the handgun, you know, and they know when it's safe, when it's not. So I get rite of passage for me is in gun ownership. Maybe when they get older, a decade from now, whenever it is, if we're going to get them their own gun or something like that, then maybe that'll be one for sure. I took them fishing, and that was a big deal to me, like helping them catch their first fish. One of the rites of passage, though, that I'm going to get on them soon on that is going to be taking their own fish off the dang hook. Because they make me hold, they're like, oh, Dad, just take it. So here's soon, we're going to be sticking your thumb in the mouth and getting it out yourself. You know what I mean? But I think about those, and the shaving thing is going to be cool. You know, that moment where they're like, why do you do this? And how is it, you know, and that kind of stuff. And those are not as big a deal to me as, now that I think about it, as they should be, because I look back and I'm all about taking the good things of my childhood, the things that I loved the most about what my parents did, and doing more of that, and the things that I thought were absent that I want, putting those in. And I don't feel like we had those rites of passage. We just kind of lived life and loved, and there weren't really big like milestone moments. And now that you mention it, it's the first time I thought, I was like, dang, like I'm gonna keep that in the memory bank. Is like, I need to make those happen, because that's something I didn't get, as a young kid.
I'll tell you why. I mean, you obviously came out just fine, and you obviously were brought up, in a way that turned you out to be a great man and a father. But there is studies on it, and the transition between being a boy, which is kind of being innocent and exploring the world and not having the same kind of consequence, and being able to play with all that masculine energy and be, aggressive, play around with your friends. And it changes at some point, and you become a man, and then you have to learn how to control those things. You have to learn how to take on those roles that we were talking about, and what it means to be a man, and the responsibility, and how to deal with yourself when you're, feeling emotional or whatever those things are. There's a transition that happens in life where you go, okay, I'm taking all these things. And most cultures had them, right? Traditionally throughout history, you look at ancient cultures, they all had these little things, and we gave up on all that. And gun ownership, shooting your first gun and then owning your first gun is huge, because you're basically saying, I have a very, very big responsibility now, because this thing can hurt somebody. Yeah. And so I'm responsible now for this. And so that's like a very important thing. And rites of passage traditionally were like, I'm going to take my kid out. He's going to camp. He's going to have his own tent. He's going to get food for himself. He's going to hunt for himself. You know what I mean? Whatever that thing was, where it's like, okay, you are fully responsible. And if things get tough, you're going to have to find your way through it on your own.
I've thought about, I will say I have thought about, I like cooking. I'm a big fan of, I'm in the kitchen as often as my wife is. And I have thought about, because my kids, they want to help, let me crack the eggs, let me whatever. So I will say I have thought about, all right, now what's the day when I'm like, do you want to make breakfast for us or something like that, and like they're in the kitchen, they got all the responsibility, and just kind of sitting back and seeing if they need. That's something that my wife and I have joked about, because Liam, our oldest, he's always like on the stool, like wanting to be like, can I help you, this, that, and the other. And we're always like, no, you're just going to make a bigger mess than it's worth. But that's something I have thought about, is the day when I can be like, all right, what did you guys make for us today? Kind of thing. And providing, like you said, providing food for yourself is one of those things. Like,
and for others, because it's, that gives them the ability, that gives them the opportunity. It's so important I feel, for parents to do is give their kids the opportunity to, you step back at a certain point as a parent, and you let them have that, because it's so hard to step away as a parent. You want to take care, you want to provide, you want to do all those things. But at some point, if they can do that for you, even just one time, it changes them. It gives them, they get to now step into their power and be like, I can do this. I can take care of you. When you get older and I need to be in charge, I need to step up, I know I can. You start giving them those opportunities. You know what I mean? And then when they're on their own, which they inevitably will be, they're confident. And like, I think it's so important to put confident men out in the world. You know what I mean? And women, confident men and women. But you got 3 boys, and I'm a man, I'm not a woman. So
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
dude, that is so good, man. Like that's, we are in the, right now during COVID and stuff, we had like the food lines and everything, and we'd have to go out and get the food from the school every week and bring it back. And it was helpful and stuff. But I told my wife, I said, I don't want to send my kids to school every day and them always eat breakfast at school. And she's like, why? I said, I want them to wake up and see daddy cooking eggs and stuff at the house, even if it's just a hard-boiled egg with some salt and a biscuit or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I want them to wake up with the norm that you have to provide for yourself and the people you love regularly. It doesn't mean that I don't send them to school with a granola bar one day or something, you know what I mean? Let them just do whatever. But it just means that as oft as not, I want them to see that you're supposed to provide for yourself, for the people you love and you want to take care of. And so, yeah, dude, that is so, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's something that totally slipped through the cracks in my head, is like making sure I got these times dialed in, because we're just living in the moment trying to get through the developmental things.
You got a lot on your plate,
That's a big deal though, man. I'm glad you said that, because now I'll be thinking about it. I will be. So I'll be making sure I get those down.
Well, it's not even changing anything. It's just like you said, giving those moments more value. Because
Mhm.
kids, man, they listen. You know what I mean? If you sit them down and you just explain why you're doing something, that could be a defining moment in their life. Most of the defining moments in my life seem like insignificant events, but to me were a huge deal just because of what my dad told me in that moment. You know what I mean? And then I was like, oh, okay. And to him, he might not have even realized the impact it was having in that moment.
Do you find that you learn so much more about your dad, like the older you get, like even not even like, well, obviously you know more than when you were itty bitty kid till now, but like from seasons of manhood, like from your 20s and on, like, do you feel like as time goes on,
Huge change. Me and my dad, we had a really rough relationship growing up, really rough. And I don't know why I was the way I was as a teenager. I can't figure it out, but I was not a good kid. And then, actually speaking of this, like speaking of the need to take care, my dad got sick and I was the only one around and I had to take care of him. And he was really vulnerable. I never saw my dad vulnerable. Uh, my dad's not the kind of guy to cry. My dad's not the kind of guy to complain, no matter what he's going through, no matter how much pain he's in. I mean, this guy needed 2 hip replacements, was still going to the gym and deadlifting. They just didn't believe that he was able to walk. They're like, you should be in a wheelchair. And he's just going to the gym and like powerlifting, and just a brilliant guy, but just tough also, just like a really tough guy. And he didn't have any brothers or sisters. His parents went through a really terrible life.
Mm.
And so he was brought up with like a father, I believe, that didn't tell him he loves him, didn't give him any kind of anything like that. And I don't know what kind of relationship they had. And I never got it, sadly, from my grandfather also, even though he loved us. I know that deep down, but he had a really, really hard life, lost his whole family pretty much. And so I don't know what kind of impact that had on my father, but there was a moment where my dad was vulnerable because he was sick, and like I said, I had to take care of him, and I had to take care of him in a very uncomfortable way, right? Like I had to do things that a doctor should be doing or a nurse should be doing, and so he was in that situation with me. And I think like after taking care of him, I saw him different. I didn't see him as like this invincible, character who, and
You're peeling back the layers.
And I think, it took years of me trying to like hug my dad for him to feel comfortable. And I'm not saying when I was a kid, there's pictures we're hugging and stuff like that. But as I got older, I don't know what it was, but like, he wouldn't say necessarily, he wasn't an affectionate guy, wouldn't express affection. And now we talk to each other. We say we love each other all the time. If I see him, I hug him and he hugs me back. And like our relationship has really changed over the years. And I see him as a real human now, not just as a father. And I think that that's the biggest change that happened to me. And I think that that's when we're talking about like being able to take that role. I love to know that if God forbid my family needed something, my father, whoever it is, I can see them as vulnerable. I can see them as human. And I'll step up to the plate. I'll drop everything on a dime and I'll go be there for you.
So like 7 years now ago, my dad went through a pretty significant battle with cancer, and now he's 83. So he went through that, but he had his nose removed, like nine different surgeries, 53 radiation treatments that I took him to as many. When I was home from the road, I was taking him to a radiation treatment. My dad was so positive. He'd get in there and with the nurses, and he'd be like, well, it's time. The turkey's here. Time to fry him up. Like, that's like how my dad would say. And they said, I hate to say this, cause it's weird, but they'd all be like, but it's always good to see you come in, but not, they're like, but it's always not, and that's just how he was and who he was. But he was always a go-getter, hardworking guy. Like, just like, and I've been taken down. I sit down with him and have interviews with him, because I've been writing his story, kind of writing his autobiography thing. And when I go through those stories, I'm traveling through him as a kid to when he came home from the military service and the man he was then. And then I compare that to the past 30 something years that I've known him and how I've seen him change. And then I compare that to who I see him as now, because who I see him as now is obviously different than just 20 years ago, through a battle of cancer. And he's struggling with, like, he's got they're saying he needs a knee replacement. He's like, I'm 83. I'm not going to worry about that. Like, it's just, there's a vast transition from from who he was and to who he is now. And like you said, for me, it was peeling layers back, being completely transparent, getting comfortable with our own mortality, like having conversations that I don't want to have with him. But he's like, when this happens, you need to so-and-so and make sure mom's so-and-so. And it's like conversations. I'm like, I want to say, shut up, man. Like, don't talk about that. But at the same time, the best response is, okay, let's talk about it, Dad, and make him feel comfortable that he can talk with me about it, because I'm part of his legacy. He needs to know that when that happens, he's got kids who are in a good place, who can, like you said, like pick up and take care of and provide for.
Yeah. And that gives him comfort also. I mean, I have the same, my dad's tried to talk about like that kind of stuff with me. And I'm like, I don't want to hear it. I don't need to hear it.
Yeah, you don't.
I really do that. I just shut off. But at the same time, they're looking for, it's a reality for them, right? It's not a reality for me. For me, I can't even think about that.
Yeah.
Like, I really cannot. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to think about it. There's no point. The day it happens is the day it happens. And I'll worry about it then. But for him, he's thinking, well, I have you guys. I have a family. That's my highest priority. And I know the most beautiful thing about my father, and I'll say this, and it's part of the reason I'm here today. My dad was one of the people. He is the person. He's the reason I got out of that dark phase when I was a kid. He's the only person who didn't give up on me. Like, I could tell my mom was at the end, and she even says it. She's like, no, but he would not give up on you no matter what. And then when I was sick, he flew across. Like, I needed a full knee reconstruction. Took care of me, stayed by my side. I got addicted to the painkillers they were giving me. He stayed with me the whole time. He's like, get off the painkillers. Everything in my life, like, I would not be here. I would not be the man I am without my father. I am everything I am because of my father. So at a minimum, I owe it to him to, like you said, carry on that. That's the whole reason for the company. I mean, I attribute everything in the company to my father. That was my way of being like, no, your legacy is continuing. Every time someone wears a watch, you're the reason, you're a part of that. And so that was my way of finding a way to say thank you to him, I think.
See, my hope, like everything you just said, like my hope is that my kids, my boys, are in a good place, because you seem like, like you're in a very good place, especially comparatively to places we've been through, that you've been through. You're in a very good place. My hope is to see one day, maybe, see my kids in a very, very good place and hear them say something like that. Like, I'm here because of my dad, I'm here. Like, that would mean the freaking world. Cause I can say the same thing about my dad. He was always faithful through everything. It's just like I said, like he's sitting there talking to people about, God and Jesus while he's getting radiation treatments, can barely stand up after they're done. You know what I'm saying? And he had every right to wonder, in their eyes, every right to be ticked off that after spending 60 years of ministry, he's got to go through this thing. And he just wasn't, he just was like, I'm at peace. I feel good. And I love people, and I'm going through something that sucks, but I still love you anyways, and that spoke to me, man. Like, that spoke to me. It's part of the reason I started like recording interviews with him and writing. We've been writing his book. Me and Joel have been working to get this Man of God project, is what we call it, out. And one of the reasons I started doing it is just because I was like, man, he's got a legacy. He's got a life lived that I want my kids to see and know about, and their kids to see and know about. And unless you're intentional with those kind of things, they don't just happen. Like you said, unless you were intentional with making a watch company in honor of your dad, it's not just going to magically happen that your dad's legacy carries on. It's not. It's on us. In that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can guarantee you. I mean, just keep being the man you are, and your kids are gonna say the same thing. I really believe that. And I mean, the best thing you could do to honor your father is be the best version of yourself as possible. And it sounds like you're out there doing that. So, and then your kids will see that. And then that is another way to carry on his legacy,
Yeah. Well, we'll see, man. I still think they're three knuckleheads, but we'll see.
Fair enough, man. Thanks so much for coming on. This was a really nice talk.
Dude, it was absolutely my privilege, man. And I'm honored to be part of it. And man, like I said before, I can't say enough about what you're doing. Keep doing it. You guys make killer stuff, man. And the videos you do, everything I see, man, is just so good, so quality. So yeah, there's that special thing about what you're doing. I believe it's there, and whether people realize it's, whether they realize it or not, it's there. So
Thank you, man. And for everyone watching, please check out their music. I'm going to put all the links down below in the description. Incredible songs, and just kind of they lift you up and just really worth listening to. So thanks so much for watching, everyone, and subscribe if you're not subscribed.